Welcome to Sunday Brunch and the Adivas, the preparation for Janmashtami, which is the celebration now. We're very honored today to have a very esteemed guest, Mr. Yadubara. So nice to see you. For those that don't know Yadubara, he's Hari's father. He is also a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, and his wife and himself are responsible for a majority of the beautiful images and video clips that we have of Srila Prabhupada. And a few years ago, he and his wife put together a major documentary about Srila Prabhupada and the movement, and it was an amazing contribution to the world and to our society. So we're grateful to have him here today. And we'll be able to hear from Yadubara today, getting us ready for this wonderful festival that we're having tonight. Welcome. Thank you for being here. And yeah, so what we can do is, Yadubara, let's say you're going to have a slideshow?
Yeah.
Okay. Where would you like to sit?
I can sit over there.
Okay.
Everybody probably come up.
Okay, sounds good. So we can.
Is there
Yeah, here.
Upstairs.
Yes.
You got it? Yeah. So yes.
Thank you very much for welcoming me. It's an honor to be here. I've heard so much about your project and your goals and your aspirations, which are fantastic. Especially the idea to buy a large parcel of land and live together. That's wonderful. And Prabhupada very much wanted that. So, I'll do a presentation today with some pictures that my wife and I took over the years.
Yeah, moving forward.
I was a student at the University of California, Berkeley, in the 60s, which was a time of turmoil, you probably all know. I went in the Peace Corps for 3 years, not knowing what to do with my life. In Malaysia, I spent 3 years there. I saw that kind of training me up to be an Indian service with the Prabhupada. I came back from Peace Corps in Malaysia and enrolled in the master's degree program in photography at Rochester Institute of Technology, upstate New York. And there I met my wife, Vishaka Devi. She was Jean Kaplan at the time. And she was an atheist. And I was kind of nowhere. I didn't know where I fit. Still the first one. Soon after we were living in New York at her parents' house for a few months, and I had put my pictures in a photo agency in New York. And one of the editor of Asia magazine saw the pictures, he liked them, and he called me up and he asked me to do a photo essay on the New York temple. He was Indian man, and he was very fascinated by the Arian Sankirtan. So when I went to the temple, first time, this is what I was led into, an arti ceremony. I was very moved by that arti ceremony. In fact, when I first entered the temple, I could feel pretty much that I was coming home. So I didn't expect that. I didn't expect anything. But I was attracted to everything about it. And Vishaka came the next day, and she wrote the article. I did the pictures, and she had a complete opposite reaction from atheists. So there was a little bit of conflict from the beginning. It came time for me to do my master's thesis in photography. I wanted to go to India to meet Prabhupada. It was very attractive. So I decided to go to India to meet him. I got these sanctioned by professors. They thought it was a very exotic idea. The problem is I didn't come back for 2.5 years. Took a picture, Vishaka and I were married, she took a picture. And of course I won the conflict between atheism and theism. Prabhupada won, actually, not myself. So we came upon the advent of the kind of in the middle of Prabhupada's World Sankirtan party. We come to India and brought the first batch of devotees, about 25 devotees. And the reception was just incredible. Just imagine, after centuries of oppression by the British, by the Muslims, trying to suppress the culture of India, here comes white-bodied Vaishnavas. And Tilak, Sari, Dodi, and having Harinam throughout the country. It was just an incredible, very moving for the Indian people. It was thrilled. And Prabhupada was ecstatic. The reception he received. Now, we all know that Prabhupada didn't have so much success before he came to America, but actually he had a lot of success in India, reaching to the intellectual class, the wealthy class of people. Because if he knew if he could influence the wealthy, the influential class, then the whole society could be influenced. So when we came back, we were invited to the homes of the wealthiest, most influential people in Mumbai. The Birlas, the Dalmias, the Makhawals, all very, very important families. So Prabhupada paved the way before he came to America in India to bring us back. They crisscrossed India by train. I didn't do much of that. Actually, this started in September of 1970. I arrived in December 1970. So this has been going on as traveling in Harinam had been going on for quite some time. Every time the train would stop in their journeys, they would jump off and Harinam on the platform. Hundreds of people would react immediately. You know, India, I guess it's something a little different, especially with white body. It's converged. So I arrived in Surat, and Surat was probably the most ecstatic place we've been. And the mayor of Surat said that even if Indira Gandhi, the prime minister, had come, she would not have received the welcome that she would probably have. I mean, every day there was Harinam through the streets. The newspapers would print the specific route, and the whole city eventually was covered in a 2-week or 3-week period. That's me. I felt like a crow among swans. Actually, when I first met Prabhupada one evening when I first arrived,
I can always go back to it.
I asked Prabhupada if I could stay, and the first thing he said, "Are you going to become a devotee?" And I said, "I don't think so." And he said, "Then you cannot stay." So I was quite crestfallen the first time. But Prabhupada knew what's in our hearts, and I had some little inkling for attraction to Krishna consciousness. The next morning I got up, nobody said anything. Prabhupada was saying, I stayed for 2 months. So this is Prabhupada's way. Shocking or attracting us, I'm not sure. The second night was this incredible engagement, and I was there. They had been there for at least 10 days before I arrived. The streets were blocked off, thousands of people gathered, a big kirtan, Prabhupada lectured. And then he asked different devotees to speak. And finally he turned to me and asked me to speak. Oh, another shock. So I mumbled a few words about the appreciation I had to the people of Surat, how they received the devotee soul. Anyway, it's just an incredible thing. You can see the streets were decorated, saris and cloths, over the canopies of the streets. And people, thousands of people came out during those Harinam. You can see just the reverence they had for the devotees. We'd walk a few steps, and there'd be another family coming out in garments and tender face, smiling. This policy day put it in garment. Here she is again. Everyone was very young. I was actually I think I was the oldest in the party. I was 27. You can imagine the mistakes we made and the immaturity. Prabhupada was our elder. We would take walks every morning by the river. I went back to Surat a few years ago, and both those entire banks were covered with buildings. It's a huge city now. Srila Prabhupada leading the Boy Scouts in Kirtan. You can see Srila Prabhupada, bless his heart, he had the vision of an 8mm movie camera. You can see it right there. He took a lot of the early films of Prabhupada. Many of those films are in our DVD series following Srila Prabhupada. This is one engagement outside of Surat. There were 4 or 5 engagements every day. And there would be prasadam in each one of them, so that was a challenge. I was just captivated by the gestures that Prabhupada was making. This is a well-known picture. This is Mongol Arati in Prabhupada's room. These are the most intense Mongol Aratis I've ever experienced. Just the devotion and Baba, that's Yamuna Devi. Okay. Very often Prabhupada would ask her to lead the kirtan. In a very small room, packed with devotees. Prabhupada was tireless. He would preach at every opportunity. As we say, 4 or 5 engagements a day. I was taking all black and white photos at that time. Some of the color photos you see are taken from still frames with films. We have, of course, 24 frames a second, and I'll make family pictures in a minute. There's a lot of material actually in the film. So far. This was Charlie in the background. She would leave quite often. She knew Sri Ishapanishad by heart. She would sing that. Often she would sing Sri Ishapanishad. This Devananda, Prabhupada's servant. Mr. Jerry Wallet is the gentleman on the right, not the person praying pronounced the Prabhupada, but just next to him, Mr. Jerry Wallet. He was our host. And he just did everything. He and his family just hosted us so wonderful. 3-story house. He was a banker. And his whole family just served and served and served. And when we were leaving, Mr. Jerry Waller was addressing us all in his front room. He said, if I caused any offense, please forgive me. Rather than him causing offense, we caused so many offenses to him. And then he started to cry. The Prabhupada said, this is the Vaishnava. So this is Kumbh Mela. I think it was one of the big ones, maybe the 6th-year Kumbh Mela, 1971. Prabhupada had us do 3 things. He wanted 3 things done. One was deity worship, prasadam distribution, and Harinam Sankirtan. There are many famous old devotees. On the right is Hansaduta in the white chadar. He recently passed away. Behind him is Yadubara. In the back of her with the blanket is Yadubara Swami. Next to him is Achyutananda Prabhu. Behind the Achyutananda is Pusta Krishna Prabhu. There's a lot of preaching in New Zealand. The next on Prabhupada's right is Arvinda, the Prabhupada's servant. Next to him is Tamal Krishna Goswami. And back of him is Radhanandan Prabhu. Radhanandan was the cook during this stay at Allahabad for 1 month. He said that was the most difficult service he's ever performed because he had to cook on sticks. He would build a fire and cook on it. He had very little wood. So he did just an amazing service. Just behind Tamal Krishna Goswami is Madhuri Devi. Tamal Krishna Goswami, that was his wife at the time. Next to Tamal is Madhavisa Prabhu. Prabhupada called him King of Kirtan. King of Kirtan leader. He eventually was the leader of Australian Yatra. This man was armed raised. He was, every time he met Prabhupada, he would throw himself on the ground, he had obeisances, and get up and start dancing with his arms raised. And that's Saraswati on Shamsundar Prabhu's shoulders in the upper left. Shamsundar Prabhu and Malati Prabhu are a married couple. He had Saraswati with him. And she was a great preacher. I think she was 3 years old at the time. She always had her arms in the air and dancing. On stage, people just enamored her. And she would come up to people and she'd pull on their dhoti or sari or kurta. And she'd say, guess what? And they would say, what? And she would say, Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then she'd run away. So Prabhupada said she was a great preacher because she was telling people what she knew. These are all still frames from the movies, from Durlop's camera. Prabhupada stayed with us. He could have stayed at the Gaudiya Math. He lived in Allahabad for many years, and he contributed a lot to the Gaudiya Math, but he donated to the deities. But he could have stayed in a hotel. He could have stayed in the Gaudiya Math. He stayed with us in a tent. It was freezing cold. Prabhupada liked that. He wanted to be with the devotees. This is one of my favorite pictures of Prabhupada. Look, he's the general of Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan army, leading us on. And so we're all going to the Gaudiya Math in rickshaws. I forget the names of the deities. Does anyone know? Mahavira. Another deity. I forget the other lady's name. Here we are in Benares. Prabhupada, that was his next stop after Kumbh Mela. And this is a Lord Chaitanya's appearance day for India. There's a festival, there's a parade through the streets, and Prabhupada was pulled in this cart. Like an open wagon by white horses. It's very beautiful. This is two young kids dressed up as Radha and Krishna. And Lord Chaitanya also. In the lower left is Chakrataka Swami. In the upper left, you can't see so well, but Dinanath Prabhu, Dinanath Prabhu is a great Chaitanya. Have you heard of him? He lives in Washington, D.C. If you have any questions anytime during the presentation, please. Okay. This Western style shirt was given to Prabhupada by the lady devotee in San Francisco. And she was thinking, what kind of collar should I make Prabhupada? And she was thinking, well, Prabhupada's a cowboy, I'll just make him a Western collar. Prabhupada's just word. This is very close up. Here we are in Mumbai. This is the first very big Mongol program. Prabhupada was just absolute genius at spreading Krishna consciousness very quickly in India with the Harinam Sankirtan Party going all over India first, World Sankirtan Party, engagements every day, and then these very big Congo programs. This is where His Holiness Radha Swami. This is the cross meter. You can see thousands of people, tens of thousands of people throughout the day, and in the evening, 20 or 30,000 be inside the bungalow. So Prabhupada asked Gurudas, Prabhupada was on stage, he asked Gurudas to go to the back of the audience and bring that one Western sadhu up on the stage. You can see the amount of people. So Gurudas went to the back, was searching, and then found that Western sadhu, brought him up on the stage, and Prabhupada asked him to sit next to him. You probably all know the story. his programs were attended by tens of thousands of people.
Many pictures of bars.
Yeah, there's one coming up. It's hard to find, it's hard to see it. You look at her soon. I'm just wondering if there's right next to the microphone stand. I don't think that's my husband. What do you think? Huh? Think so? Oh, that's it. Anyway, let's go ahead. There was a marriage ceremony on stage with the entire audience there. This is Vegabond Prabhu, his wife. Vegabond Prabhu is from Sweden and his wife from Australia. The Prabhupada said this is the real United Nations. The audience cheered. This is,
Oh, there's more.
yeah, there's Mars in the back with the long hair. I think that's the only picture. But this, again, is from a very tiny movie frame. Not very clear. So after 2 months in India, I was writing to Jean, my girlfriend, asking her to come to India to join me. My idea was for her to become a devotee, and her idea was to bring me back. So I was already completely convinced. She brought with her her book. She was an excellent photographer. For her sophomore thesis, she did a book, Photography and Techniques, and that was reviewed by some of the most famous photographers in the world.
Is that cabbage?
It is.
Oh, really? Oh.
Okay. We showed Prabhupada that book on our first meeting. This is some, anyway, she came to Mumbai and we started taking our art photography again, walking the streets of Mumbai. These are a few pictures.
Remember what Prabhupada said when she showed?
There's anyway, some of our so-called art photography. This fellow was outside the crossing of Narrow. And I think he had some kind of straw and it related to the grade, but his head was buried in sand. This is during our trek in Nepal. Before we came down, let's just hold on for a second. We met Prabhupada, and he said that he saw the book. It was full of mathematical equations for macro photography. He said this is very technical. He appreciated the pictures. Prabhupada gave us the instruction. We asked him what we wanted to do a story in a quaint Indian village, untouched by modern technology. So we asked Prabhupada where to go. He said, wherever you go, if your camera is stolen and they will cheat. Best to go to Vrindavan. So before we went to Vrindavan, we went to Nepal. Here's some of the pictures from Nepal. We had one book with us, Bhagavad Gita, Prabhupada's first Gita. We were again taking many pictures. We stayed maybe 4 or 5 days in this abandoned hut. At around 10,000 feet, just a gorgeous valley with mountains rising thousands of feet in the distance. And we read Bhagavad Gita. And that was the first time that Vishaka had an inclination that she might be something other than the body. She was intrigued with that idea. So we came back down to Vrindavan. And Vishaka was very captivated. She would spend many hours, we both spend many hours every day inside the temples, especially this temple with all the widows. We gather every day and chant. She was especially moved by the devotion and bhakti of the temples. And at one point, we were married. I'd already taken Diksha in Calcutta. And then we went from Calcutta, Prabhupada took us to the Delhi Panda, which was another very large Panda program. And they took us to Vrindavan on wedding ceremony. We had an uninvited but very welcome guest, and that was Prabhupada. He had come out of the Himalayas to find Prabhupada, to meet Prabhupada. And he wandered into our room. So we spent about a month in Vrindavan. And in other towns, we went to Jaipur for programs. This is Vishaka has her family, she's in the front. Some kind of branch. Flower. Vishaka had most of the women, of course, on these walks, you always see the women in the back. Vishaka could be up front with no problem. Sometimes there's one problem I'll tell you about later. Here we are in Jaipur. I was fortunate holding through the Prabhupada's pain. Gargamuni Swami on the right. And so we came back. We initially went to the Judu temple. We spent about 2 years trying to develop that temple. Before there was anything, you probably heard about the early days of Judu. Very austere. We're happy to be there, but we're always wondering when we get the chance to use our photography and eventually filmmaking ability. So one day we got a letter from Purandar Prabhu, who was the head of the Bhaktivedanta the BBT, and he asked us to make a film on the movement. There was no films at the time. So we asked Prabhupada, and Prabhupada liked that idea. And Prabhupada funded the film. He gave us $16,000 in book fund, which was very unusual at the time, quite a bit of money at the time. And usually the funds were used for building temples and printing books. So Prabhupada understood the value of media. We wanted to film. We came back to America and bought a film on filmmaking. We hadn't made a film yet. And then produced the Hare Krishna people. This is the 16mm camera in Persian. And it's got this covering over it to keep it quiet while we blink. This is the sound recorder that we use. The sound wasn't together with the film. The film was on the camera and the sound was on the recorder. And this is how we made our first film with winds, winding it, not at the correct speed, hand winding through a viewer, and cutting and splicing and all that. So the narration was done by Robert Molnar. We wanted Dravida Prabhu to narrate the film. We were living in New York. He was sick for weeks. He wouldn't get better. So we found this band, Robert Molnar. He was a professional narrator, and he came and was very happy to do it. He wanted to donate. Actually. We gave him a Maha plate and $25. And then Howard Wheeler is Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna kind of fine-tuned the script. He's a great writer. If you get a chance to read his books, please do. So this is the scene of the BBT warehouse at the time. And this is 1973, only 7 years after Prabhupada really started the very beginnings of the movement. And this is what's happening. And forklifts, containers, flights going around the world, delivering books. It's incredible. It's incredible. Initiations, marriages. This is the chief commissioner of the state of UP with a very big program in Delhi. As I say, Prabhupada met many of the influential people of India before he came to America. They paved the way for coming back to India. This is a clip from the still shot of the Hare Krishna people film. This was shot in slow motion, so you see the cows kind of floating down the hill. When Prabhupada saw this, he said, "Can you fix that?" I don't think he'd seen slow motion. He said, "Prabhupada, it's a technique." He said, "Okay."
What fun is it?
Hmm?
Where was that?
Never known. This is the final scene of the movie Prabhupada dancing with the Bhaktivedanta banner, with the installation of the deities. How many people have seen this Hare Krishna? It's actually on a DVD series called Following Srila Prabhupada. I'm sorry, called ISKCON Similar Concepts. There's 6 other films taken in those years. Prabhupada saw 4 of them. So we could talk about the other films, but I think we can end here. If you have any questions or comments?
In that process of learning you guys follow into a Prabhupada, or were you kind of just buying tickets to different places and going? What was your travel like?
We followed him initially to Europe. We filmed him extensively at the Bhaktivedanta. This place was in Paris. And then a lot of existing films we took that were there already, and we shot a lot in return. Yes.
Did you, Prabhupada, ever, because sometimes cameras can be a bit intrusive,
Yes.
did that ever happen? And what was the rasa? Because it's always kind of a fine line, like, am I intruding, but I'm doing my service, but, trying to do the service like Govinda, he stepped over Lord Chaitanya because it was his service. So sometimes you have to kind of push your envelope at the same time, you might push back. So did you ever experience that with Prabhupada, that he had some of that?
Yeah, I did. It wasn't exactly like that. I was in Surat, I would sit in Prabhupada's room as people would come in and visit me. And I would take a lot of pictures. Each person who came and he would probably introduce me to him. He would say, "This is Mr. John, he's from America. He is an expert photographer, and he is appreciating our Krishna consciousness." Same thing every time. So I think Prabhupada was used to me from the beginning. But there's other photographers he would chance me. Barton, he chastised so severely one time. Barton just left. He just walked away for maybe overnight, or maybe late into the night. He couldn't find it. He was concerned about it. That's when he came back.
What was the chastisement?
I forget the details. I probably shouldn't. He was a little heavy with one time we set up at the manor a session of Prabhupada speaking outside. It was a disaster. Bart actually had the tape recorder, he was going to record the audio. I was on the camera, but somehow the audio wasn't working properly. Prabhupada was sitting there waiting. And finally we just said, Prabhupada, it's not working. So Prabhupada looked at Bart and he said something about being useless. The equipment is useless and you're useless. I feel like to still tell a story about my chastisement. We were on a morning walk in Denver, and the kind of a fad at that time was fasting amongst the devotees.
That was your question?
No, that was fad.
No, but I think it's like, because I've heard this morning walk.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. So, you probably know better than I hadn't heard it for a long time. But Krishna Goswami was kind of critical of fasting. So, Prabhupada, we should just take the shot. And I actually went through the fasting with kind of disastrous results. So I was right there listening, and so Prabhupada started walking again after this conversation. And I thought I would add something, so I said, yes, Prabhupada, my diets are useless. So he turns around, he plants his cane, turns around, looks me straight in the eyes. He says, the diet is useless or you are useless? That was stunning. I was speechless. But it was brilliant. Prabhupada was right on cue. Because I was not taking responsibility. I was passing it off on the diet. The diet is useless. What about me? I embraced the diet. I accepted the diet. It really gets back to accepting responsibility for everything we do and our conditioning. Our conditioning is life. Because we can say this person did this to me, that person did that. I have a terrible life, or we can pass it off on so many things. But responsibility is ours. We performed actions in our past life that give us advantages or disadvantages in this life. Great lesson. Another story is very instructive. Was that Vishaka Devi was in 1974 Bhakti Yatra, and Prabhupada was on stage, big kirtan, and so she wanted to come. I was on stage with the camera. She wanted to come on to take still pictures and record. But there was a guard on the steps of the stage who wouldn't allow any women to come on the stage. He was adamant. So Vishaka was very frustrated. She said, I'm the DVT photographer. I must come on stage to do my service. He said no. He wouldn't let her on stage. Imagine the frustration she was going through. But anyway, very despondent, she just took her equipment and wandered off into the audience and sat down in a chair. And then with her back to the stage. And all of a sudden she heard this tremendous uproar from the crowd. Prabhupada was going to speak dancing. And so she immediately jumped on the chair and took one of the most famous photographs of all time. I don't have that photograph, but you've probably seen it. Prabhupada with his arms raised. You can see people's hands in the foreground and devotees dancing on either side. So this is a lesson, that something that may be seen completely outrageous and tragic turns out to be a good thing. Can you think of other stories in the Shastra that illustrate that?
Chitraketu, the son passed away and was killed by the wives. And then from that, we actually got the association memory.
That's a good one. Anything else? Yes. Hmm?
Where's the photo sheet, Arjuna?
Yeah. Amazing. Yes.
You and your good wife have been visionaries in doing this kind of work. So the Army Collective is a lot of artistic minds. What would you recommend to this community to also be visionaries and to kind of take things forward from your experience? Because you saw what a struggle it was to deal with not just the technology but also the circumstances, and people may not always appreciate what you're doing if you're a little different and you have your vision and your mission in order to execute that. So what would you suggest to this community to make a contribution that would be impactful?
One thing is extreme patience in getting to that goal, because sometimes it takes a while. We were in Judah for 2 years before we could really use our talents. We're always thinking when we could use things we were trained to do. So keep that vision. Don't give it up. And be very patient. That's one of the qualities that we need in devotion service. Whether Goswami outlines those qualities in effective devotion. Determination, enthusiasm, and patience. Oftentimes we don't think of patience. Determination, enthusiasm, patience is very important. You just keep that vision, and no matter what happens, there'll be tests, for sure. Krishna wants to test us. You see about our determination, how convinced we are. That's the glories of Prabhupada's life. He so much exemplified his traits. I tell people that even ordinary outside people, business, and whatever field they're in, they can learn a lot from Prabhupada. Determination, enthusiasm, patience, faith, notice of those heroes. Everybody, no matter what field they're in, can benefit from this. We just discovered this incredible review on a Christian, a very prominent Christian preacher. They like to watch movies and comment on them. Somehow they got a hold of Hare Krishna. And he gives a rundown of the whole film. And the qualities are powerful. It's just incredible. I'm going to transcribe it. It's about a half hour. It's a half hour of the video of him speaking. There's another, I think, over 3 hours of his just the audio of him talking about the film, and that half an hour is included in that, just audio. But a lot of people, they watch the film, and each person comments to him about their realizations. It's amazing. Well, it's on YouTube. There's been 18,500 views in a week and 7,000 likes. Yeah, it was streamed live, I think, for a few days ago.
Well, this person video, this reaction.
Yeah. The Prabhupada is still on tour.
How long did it take you until you felt like you've accomplished something? Because initially it was like a lot of struggle.
Well, the first film, Prabhupada appreciated that film. It was premiered in his room in Mayapur.
How long from when you started to do that?
That took about a year. Anyway, it was completely packed. His room was completely packed. Sannyasi GBC temple president. That was enough. It was overflowing. Vishaka was outside on the veranda with no place to sit. The Prabhupada saw her and he beckoned for her to come in and sit next to him. The sannyasi had to go away. And he said, ladies first. Lord. So yeah, that went all over the world. Many hundreds of prints. And we had a projector called a Fairchild projector. And it looked like a briefcase, but it opened up into a projector. You could either project it on the wall or have a little screen and fold it up. And those who go all over the world in different countries, projector make like members and collection.
It's somewhat of a technical question, but how would you copy film?
Copying film, you have to make a print, which is very expensive. To make a print of the film, there's no video.
So you would just print all the.
I would make many films from the original negative.
And then you'd have to link up the audio also.
That was done from the master. So when the prints were made, the audio was on it was on little two kinds. It was on a little magnetic stripe on the film, but more often it was an optical image. It was kind of like a sound wave, a visual sound wave, printed onto that film.
Sometimes that technology is more mind-boggling
Yeah.
than technology.
Because you can, everything now is invisible. You can't see it, you can't hold it. Then everything was very, hands-on. It takes a long time for us old guys to get used to new technology. I couldn't understand how a video could be sent digitally from one computer to another computer. I couldn't. I just couldn't believe it could happen until I saw it. So it takes me used to it. But the old technology was quite very tedious. Very tedious, very expensive. 10 minutes of film it cost $35 for 10 minutes of film back then.
Just the real.
Just the reel. I could only carry 10 of these, about a dozen of these reels to India. I only had 2 hours of film on India.
And so you would just take clips and
Take clips and then put in a light type can until I could develop it. Bring it back and develop it. And to make a film, you had to make a copy of that original, to work on that, and scratch the original. And then the long process. To see a dissolve, a simple dissolve, you have to mark on the film with a grease pencil on the work print. Send that to the lab to see visually where you want it to dissolve. Either long or short. Mark with a grease pencil on the film, and then you do it in the lab. Produce another print that you would have to come and see, approve, like it. If you didn't like it, you have to make another print to see it. Online. So, new technology is incredible, but we lost two weeks of work because of not backing it up on time. You know, so anyway, you have a wonderful project here, wonderful group, tremendous potential, great enthusiasm. You have all the ingredients. Just remain true to the philosophy. You know, don't go away. Don't criticize. Criticizing is very easy. The Prabhupada saw that when somebody would come to him, he would invariably say, you set the example by perfect behavior, and others will follow. Yes.
Mother was not writing books.
Probably. I don't know. She doesn't tell me about it. I mean, I know. Generally. She doesn't tell me about her articles so much, but books. I'm not sure about another book. The last one was incredible. Yeah.
Yeah, I love
Now you know all about us.
it. I'm trying to get him to it.
We're trying.
Yeah. Maybe you could say something about the dynamic of, because you have a lot of life experience and emotional service, that if you're in a relationship and there's this conception that people want to be number one, but then you're a devotee, so you know Krishna is always number one, and then comes Guru. So then you're going to be number three. And are you cool with that? Because sometimes relationships may not flourish because people have different expectations, or they're just not very realistic about their own capacity and about Krishna consciousness. So what was your experience in that? Because you saw your own development, how you got into Krishna consciousness and you got into marriage life, and you're still, going strong. So maybe you can share some of your reflections, how to accommodate the partner and make sure that, Krishna and Guru are there in their proper positions, so it doesn't become like a competitive, competing type of situation, which nobody can actually win, because instead it becomes a lose-lose.
Yeah, there's many things to speak about in that broad spectrum. We all come to Krishna consciousness with our individual desires and egos. It's not easy. The spiritual path is not easy. I mean, I went through, we both went through difficult times in our relationship, in our marriage, bringing up children. So it's don't expect it to be easy. It's a Sometimes we're seen to be perhaps an ideal family, but even in the most seemingly ideal family, it's difficult. Unless you're coming to Krishna consciousness from a very, very advanced state. It's all this wilderness. Well, yeah, that's rare. So there's going to be challenges. And take shelter of those you respect, your friends. Make friends with like-minded devotees. And preach to those who, this is the formula, preach to those who are new. And serve the exalted Krishna. Services are our savior. Savior. Okay. Same thing. It's really true. We may be nothing. We may not be able to follow anything. And that's going to be true of some of us. But, serve the advanced world. It's really what the service. And keep that association strong. There's many things to talk about. Does that answer kind of broadly? Mm-hmm.
You get a second chair.
I'm just not very qualified to speak. Just trying to hang in there. Do some service. Yes, Prabhu.
I may have missed this, but what was it like when you first met Prabhupada? Like, your emotion, like when you first seen him, like did you know, like, wow, this is my guru?
No, I was too dull. It took time for me. I was nervous. I could tell the Prabhupada was aware of everything around him. And not only the externals, but the internals, their hearts and minds. So that was, disconcerting. Many devotees will say that. Well, I was never feeling comfortable and gigantic stature, spiritual stature. Many devotees stories. Following to the Prabhupada DVD series, an instantaneous recognition that this is my guru. Particularly time. Okay.
When it's left open like this, ask me anything that I don't have anything to ask.
I was like that with Prabhupada. I didn't have many questions, except when I thought I should ask something. I'll be on a morning walk and with 2 or 3 devotees. And sometimes I would ask them Prabhupada, sometimes not say anything. Prabhupada knew everything about consciousness.
Since tomorrow is Janmashtami, were you at the first Janmashtami celebration?
In what year? 1970. I was there just before that, working on the first article for the magazine, and I heard about John Musker. I couldn't stay, and I wanted to stay because it was chaos. Absolute chaos. Because there was some deviation at that time. There was some preaching that Prabhupada was Bhagavan. Prabhupada is God. It was a complete misunderstanding of the philosophy. So there was some underestimation originally before that. The Prabhupada was he wasn't seen in the proper light as a group. He was undervalued. So this went to the other extreme. There's actually the leaders of that kind of the force and the Yasas involved in that. Ramananda Prabhu, and I probably should have probably researched, talks extensively about why that happened. They're very, very honest appraisal of that time. I should have brought that DVD series home from probably. That's available at discountcinema.com. Also, we have DVDs of the Hare Krishna movie. And Discount Cinema Classics. We have a few DVDs of that. That's available on discountcinema.com also.
There are some flyers for the Hare Krishna film over on that rack. Yeah, I can go back.
Yes.
How did the difficult times of this time affect you on your faith, and what kept you going forward?
Difficult times in this time were, difficult, certainly, but, there's always going to be difficulties. Prabhupada gave the example of the hospital. There's always going to be sick people in the hospital. That's what it's meant for. There's always going to be problems. Sickness. And it's a place to get well. It's not a place to expect that there's no mind. Actually, Prabhupada was asked that. There was a statement by a devotee, I think in South America. He asked, there was a guest coming to the temple. She said, Prabhupada, there's Maya in this temple. Prabhupada's answer was, if you can show me a place where there's not Maya, we will go there. So we carry that with us. To the extent we're attracted to material energy, we carry that. We carry that with us. It's a place. This is a place for healing. And we have the formula for healing. So just don't forget that formula when we left. I think of the brothers, Shinani Das and Papa Jani, in Mayapur for years and years and years, and the things that went on Mayapur. Very, very. From internally and externally. What would you say? You've gone through it. Yeah, keep moving forward. Don't become distracted.
It is to be experienced.
It is to be expected. We'll eventually get to the place where it's not expected. Don't give up that. Back to God. Thank you very much for the Prabhupada.
Grace Yadubara Prabhu ki,
Jai.
Prabhupada ki,
Jai.